Current financial report, you've all received a copy of the current financial report from the auditor's office. Any questions or a comment or motion to approve?
Motion. Mr. Hensley.
Mr. Hensley, motion by Mr. Hensley to approve the current financial report. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Addishell?
Yes.
Approval of the agenda. I have nothing to add or delete at this time.
Move to approve the agenda as it is presented.
Motion by Mr. Schmidt to approve the agenda as presented. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Addishell?
Yes.
Public hearing, we have nothing scheduled for this evening. Anyone wishing to address council may do so at this time. Please come and state your name and address and whatever. Seeing no one hurrying to the microphone, under public hearings, I just want to remind everyone that the legislation for the for the zoning amendment or the change in zoning to the Bish Discovery Center down off of Ohio Street. That's where the former Spencer's Landscaping was, now belongs to the Dark County Park District, and that they requested a rezoning. So that legislation is prepared. It'll lay for 30 days. Anyone wishing to review that legislation may pick up a copy at the auditor's office. That's where it is being maintained. And the public hearing on that issue will be then the first meeting in November, which will be the November 6th meeting. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. So the legislation's prepared and it's available for review. Continuing on the agenda, administrative reports, Mayor Wellman.
Couple things. So you all know and public knows that they decided, you're probably aware, that there's a group called the Concerned Citizens. They have another name, but they started meeting a couple months ago, talk about the opioid problem, homeless people, nuisance, things like that in the city, just to talk. They've had our police chief and Eric Roberts was in, talked to him, as well as the Sheriff's Department. Mark Whitaker was in and talked to him quite a bit. And just to answer a lot of questions that people really in the public don't know what's happening, how things are done, what it takes to get some things done, and trying to get some of these people off the streets, nuisances, people causing nuisances, and just why it's happening and what's going on, what they can do. So they decided they're going to meet every month on the third Wednesday. So that'll be coming up on the 17th. And that they have their meetings at the Missionary Alliance Churches down there by the Antioch statue, right behind there. So anybody that wants to come can come. I think you get an email or something from that. You should have, but that's when it is. It'll always be on the third Wednesday at 7:30, I believe. So it's kind of interesting. It's nice to hear from the public. They're trying to find out things that they could help with, help the police, help the community. And it's just it's a good deal. So be there to answer questions or whatever you want to do. You can speak up or whatever. So
Mayor,
go ahead.
what time's the meeting?
What's that?
What time
I
they
think
meet?
it's 7:30.
7:30. Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
And then the other thing, I want to give you a heads up. There's going to be a request from the Greenville CIC that their meeting. We always delay the meeting end of November because of Thanksgiving. It'll be on the first Wednesday of December, and we hope to make that a combined meeting with council. So we're having that earlier in the evening. Planning on, that's the 5th of December.
December 5th.
And they want to do that like at the CIC meet at 5:30. And then for like a half hour or so, and then the council meet right after that, like at 6, if that's possible. So I just want to see where we're at with that, to see if we can do that.
You have to advertise the meeting.
Well, That's,
And
yeah.
secondly,
Sure.
what's the proposed location?
I
Here in
think,
council chambers?
well, Wayne, at Wayne Healthcare said he would provide a room if you wanted to do that. So, yeah, I realize the public would
I
have to
was
be.
thinking, well, since it is a combined meeting and it is something that have to be stated, we'd have to have it easily accessible for the public as well.
Right, right. So, it's going to be a request that it's going to come up, and we talked about it last Wednesday, and I just wanted to make sure you knew about it early, and that it's something that we got to look at on how that's the logistics of that. So if we want to have it here, we need to tell them we want to have it here. So that's something we need to look at. But we got a little time to get it done, so think about it. Look at your schedules. I don't know when you want to schedule that or when. It's kind of one of the things we needed to talk about was our strategic plan, that we've accepted and gone through that process, and we have a strategic plan. And we wanted to kind of present that to the council to make sure they understand what we plan on working on and how it's going, to make sure that goes along with what the council foresees that we should be looking at. So, and one of the objectives in that proposal is that we have more communications with council, and that was one of the things that they wanted to make sure we do at least once a year or so, have a combined meeting so we can talk things out. So look at that date. I don't think we have to schedule it today or anything like that. But, keep it in mind, we'll have to look at it again. So with that, I pass. Anybody have questions about it, so let me know.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, Safety Service Director, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Good evening, Council. Start off by giving you an update on the various projects that we have going on in the city. South end, we have the Burke Street reconstruction where we use the reclaiming process. That reclaiming process was done as of last Friday. The subsurface has been curing. It is a concrete product, cementitious product that they applied in the ground, and that has cured over the last several days, and it is ready for asphalt. And we are waiting on RB Juergens to do a few minor cleanup items, and then Walls Brothers will be paving that. And we anticipate that to be done by the end of the week or the first part of next. Just a reminder, the road is closed. However, there are various businesses that one may need to gain access to. The subsurface can be driven upon. However, it's probably better for all if we would take a side street such as Central, Wayne, Harrison, Washington, whatever it may be, to be the easiest access for folks. Homeowners have complete availability to their home, emergency services as well to that area. So it is a little dusty. Watch the speed. If they drive rather fast, it will create a little dust storm. So we do, as I said, look for that project to be done by hopefully the next week. And then our 2018 maintenance paving is probably 80% done. We have moved to the south end. I believe half of Washington was complete today. They'll be working on Seder the rest of the week. It's a rather long stretch, so that may take a couple days, then hopefully down to Burt, and like I said, and then be winding that project up. And then with Fort Schweitzer, if you've been in that area, you've noticed that they've moved to the second phase. From Euclid down to Sycamore Street, we began the installation of the various storm lines. The lighting company is in the process of installing streetlight foundations. So that project is moving forward nicely with the anticipation, if Mother Nature would cooperate, that we could get a good bit of concrete work and asphalt work done prior to the snow flying. But that will require a lot of cooperation with Mother Nature. So those are the various projects. Appreciative to all the citizens who are putting up with the mess as we're tore up from one end to the other. Just be patient with the construction workers, and we'll manage to get through this. I have given Mr. Burkett a committee assignment this evening that I received a request yesterday via email, and Vicki has that email as a matter of communications for the rest of council. A little bit of background. The Darke County Health Department has been contacting various households or property owners outside of the city of Greenville who are within 300 feet of public utilities. This includes property owners on 49 South and property owners along 121 or North Ohio Street as you leave the city. The health department is concerned with the various septic systems. They have labeled them as failing, and they are requiring these property owners to tie into the public utility system. However, the caveat to that is the city of Greenville has a codified ordinance in which states that it will not sell utilities outside of city limits. However, various conditions have been placed on certain agreements, and agreements have been made with property owners outside of the city to sell utilities. And the process that we have went through previously, I believe Mr. Serber had a property, the Markville Tool Building at the corner of Meeker and Ohio was one, or of 49 South. That was one of the latest properties that we discussed. And when that proposal came forward to council, the proposal was sent out to the utility committee. The utility committee reviewed the request. I believe that certain conditions were placed upon the request, and that was brought back to council, and council voted to approve the sale of utilities as long as the various conditions were met. So we have a request from Mr. Brian Kirkpatrick on the south end of town who would like to tie into sanitary and would like to tie into the water. I believe Mr. Kirkpatrick would live on the west side as you leave the city. And so he has water on his side of the street, but sanitary is on the other side of the street. So with that, I have given the written request to Mr. Burkett, and can assign that as appropriate. And then I will save the rest of my comments to old business. So with that, I will pass.
Okay. It's not a super pressing issue, but we don't want to drag it on very long if we can.
I am unaware of the time frame that the health department has placed on
Okay.
the various individuals.
I would assign that to the utility committee as we've done before. It's Mr. Godwin, Mr. Wright, and Mr. Hensley, and ask that that be returned by at least the first meeting in December, which is December the 4th. And as always, if you get it accomplished before that, we can take it. I'll send this down. That's the copy of the request to Chairman Wright. Okay, you said that's it?
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Law Director, Mr. Brand, is absent this evening. City Auditor, Mrs. Woolman.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Just wanted to let everybody know that this week we are meeting, the administration is meeting with the department heads to go over the 2019 budget, so it is moving along. Hopefully, we might possibly get with you sometime next month, more likely in December, I would say. But that process is beginning. And I guess the only other thing I have is to remind you, Mr. Burkett, that we need a committee assignment.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I
That
have.
I passed.
Yes. While we're passing out committee assignments, here we go. I received a communication from the auditor saying that she would request the Finance Committee assignment to review the salaries for the following elected officials, whose terms will commence in 2020. As you know, in order to be on the ballot for the end of November, which will be a year from now, you cannot award a raise for anyone currently in office. So this will have to be for the future office holders. And those offices are the mayor, the law director, the auditor, the Ward 4 ward council members. That doesn't include treasurer?
No.
Okay.
No, she's not in there.
All right. So review and the assistant law director's salary commencing in 2019. So what we would, in all fairness, we'd like to have this at least by the last meeting in December so we can set those salaries so people commencing in January taking out petitions will know what the compensation for that position will be. So I'm going to pass this on to the Finance Committee Chairman, Mr. Hensley. And do second meeting in December, which is the what, 19th? Huh? 18th? December 18th, 18th. You want to send that down? Sure. Okay. Is that it? Mrs. Woman? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have nothing under committee reports. We have one ordinance to consider tonight, that's the supplemental appropriations ordinance.
An ordinance to make additional appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Greenville, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018. There was a change and an addition to the summary of this ordinance. This ordinance authorizes appropriations to the general fund for gas, oil, vehicle maintenance, fire department in the amount of $5,252.50. These funds are needed for intervention supplies and are being paid for by a BWC grant. Salaries, fire secretary salary in the amount of $8,200. These funds are needed to cover the retirement payouts made to the previous fire department secretary. And to the park fund for interdepartmental charges, street salaries park, in the amount of $10,000. These funds are needed to cover labor costs for mowing, winterizing, tree removal, playground repairs, and pond maintenance for the park. And to the Spartech TIF fund for transfers out, Spartech TIF, in the amount of $97,236.42. These funds are needed to cover a transfer to the general fund and represent final TIF payments from the county. And to the Anderson's Marathon TIF fund for transfers out, Anderson's Marathon TIF, in the amount of $125,921.28. These funds are needed to cover a transfer to the general fund and represent final TIF payments from the county.
Make a motion to suspend the rules on this ordinance and read it by title only, second and third time.
That's for Mr. Godwin to suspend the rules, read the ordinance by title. Excuse me, second, third time, discussion. Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Hoddeshaw?
yes,
An ordinance to make additional appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Greenville, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018. An ordinance to make additional appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Greenville, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018.
Move to adopt the ordinance?
Motion for Mr. Rogers to adopt the ordinance, discussion. Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Hoddeshaw?
yes,
Oh, needs to sign them all, huh? I'm going to comment to Mr. Garrison. How Mother Nature cooperated in testing our storm sewer system right after the Fourth Street got completely done. And this afternoon, it kind of tested all the water running I had on occasion to be on Fourth Street after that rain, and it looked like rivers on both sides. So, very interesting. Under old business, we have the Personnel and Public Relations Committee report that was considered last meeting and was tabled. So with that placed under old business, it's whatever this council, or how you want to proceed with this issue.
Can we discuss it without taking it off the table?
You have to have a motion on the floor in order to discuss.
I'll make a motion
The what?
to discuss it.
Well, you're either going to have to take it off the table to discuss it.
Motion to take it off the table.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Godwin to lift this item from the table. Any discussion on the motion to lifting from the table? Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Hottishell?
Yes.
Okay, now we have the original motion back on the table. Further discussion.
I had gotten a copy of the, printed out a copy of the regulation from the EPA, which is an Ohio Administrative Code item. I read it. First thing that I noticed was that it seemed that there was a hang-up with the possibility of negotiating with the union, the possibility of doing this assignment. And the hang-up seemed to be that it had to be a supervisor, and that they didn't want to do it because they had it in their contract that they wouldn't be a supervisor. Well, nowhere in there did I see that. So I called and talked to the EPA, and they said that it does not have to be a supervisor, which then would seem like it would open it up that we could negotiate with the union on having somebody actually be a operator of record in the absence of the water plant supervisor. I also saw in there where if we met certain criteria, we wouldn't have to have a operator of record there 40 hours a week, that it could be cut down if we met certain criteria. And it appeared that we did. So in talking with the EPA, I was talking that, we have a supervisor, of the water plant now, and what would we do if he wasn't there? And they said they had safeguards built in. And in reading it, that if the operator of record can be absent up to 30 consecutive days, and we don't even have to report that to the EPA. If it goes over the 30 days, then we have to report that. And what they would be looking at is, are we trying to circumvent this reporting person? So there's a lot of unanswered questions that I think that we should look at this harder. It's a very technical thing. We'll look at it harder than what we're looking at. In talking with, I've talked to Kurt to make him aware of everything so that I didn't want to step on anybody's toes on this thing. But apparently that the water superintendent actually has contacted the EPA, and he's got a waiver of those hours down to 20 hours because we meet certain criteria. And from what I understand, that which I'm sure Kurt can explain, he's talked to the union rep, and they are not totally against the idea of being the signing party. So what I could see is that any time that the plant operator reporting person is absent and we need to rely upon a secondary reporting person to sign the papers, that they get some sort of plus pay. At the police department, or in my day, if there was no sergeant on duty, the patrol officer with most seniority become the OIC, the officer in charge. And we negotiated that that person would get plus pay, which was actually one step, which is 5% at that time, only for those hours that they were the OIC. So if the sergeant showed up 4 hours later, then that stopped that plus pay. So that would be the minimal way to go as far as cost. But it should be a negotiated item with, and we're going into negotiations here. I also asked them, because I heard that, Monday being a holiday, we'd be in non-compliance. Because the reporting operator wouldn't be there. So I asked the EPA, does it have, is the 20 hours, it's 4 hours a day for 5 days. Does it have to be Monday through Friday? Can it be Tuesday through Saturday? Can it be different hours? And they said yes. It may not alleviate that problem because apparently he doesn't work on Saturdays either. But I think it's a thing of, I'm very conservative when it comes to money. So I think that the least impact upon the cost to do this would be to negotiate that with the union and come up with an agreement rather than creating a whole new position. In the absence of the reporting person, it doesn't have to be another, quote, reporting person. It has to be a person with either a Class 3 or a Class 2 license. So we have apparently 5 Class 3 certified water operators out there now. So we have plenty of personnel.
May I have the opportunity to put this in? Mr. Hensley did a very good job of relaying what the EPA rules and regulations are, and I would like to put those in a practical standpoint of how they apply to the city of Greenville, if I might have the opportunity. Sure. Okay. So I'm going to start out by saying, and I understand Mr. Hensley's comment about being fiscally responsible. However, just would like to, hopefully we can be in agreement about one thing right off the bat, is that the City of Greenville Water Department is going to hire one employee regardless of whether or not it's this assistant or if it's going to be a union employee, because we had an employee leave, right? So we need to replace that employee. So no matter what, right now, we're faced with hiring at least one individual.
Kurt, there you go.
Which one did you get?
That one. Thank you.
Did you get a copy? Pardon? I'm sorry.
Yes, he just gave it.
Okay.
And the administration water plant supervisor reviewed this earlier today in a meeting. So with the understanding that we're going to hire at least one individual, if we hired, we may or may not end up with, if we go with the non-assistant route, we may or we may not end up with a level 3 certified person immediately. And Mr. Hensley's correct that to be this operator of record, we don't necessarily need a 3. We can use a 2 in an emergency or limited basis. So what I've broken down, and I've given you 2 sheets. The second sheet I have given you is the budget sheet prepared by wastewater, or the water superintendent, and this is basically just to explain what what various people are currently making at the city water plant. So the minimum base pay, and so now I am back to this sheet. Says the water treatment plant operator class 3. The minimum base pay at on that particular job is $51,646.40. Now this is the starting rate of pay. So this would be their step one. And then when they step out, or finish the step process, they end up at $56,950.40. However, being a union employee, they receive holiday pay if they work on the holidays, and it boils down to, I believe they're making 3 times their regular rate of pay on a given holiday if they choose to work. And I can attest to the fact that if you have the opportunity to work on a weekend, you do not take off. So that pay for a particular employee ends up being $5,476. And then there's various times that they would be called in for overtime for an additional $1,642.80, making their annual pay $64,069.20. Mr. Hensley's comment about going into a negotiating year and being able to negotiate a rate of pay for this plus pay, that has actually occurred, I guess, between the superintendent and the union before I ever brought this to council, because that was the preferred route. The preferred route was not to create this assistant superintendent position, but to go to the union and work out a mutual agreement to get them to fill out the reports and do the things that an operator of record needs to do. And there are more items, more responsibilities than just filling out reports and signing logbooks. However, that's what we've reduced it to. That is the minimum that an operator of record would be required to do. So the discussed amount in this quasi-negotiating process came out that they wanted $1.50 an hour. And that would be $1.50 an hour that would be designated to whichever person or persons stated that they would be the backup operator of record. They came back in the negotiating process and said, we do not want our name on that list of operators of record. However, we would be the backup, and that backup would fill in during times of vacation, sick, basically any paid time off. Those individuals would step up and fill that position. And looking at that and doing it that way, it seems to make sense that you would have at least 2 individuals who would be designated as backups, as not everybody works 7 days a week. And we are a 24/7 operation. So depending on how the holiday would fall or when the day off would fall, it might require 1, because we don't want to get into a situation where we've already got this person working, but now we've got to call somebody else in and pay them to be the backup operator of record. So you can do the math and you can see what I've come up with is that a person in our particular plant right now, if they had, and we designated 2 people as backup operators of record, it would cost the city approximately $70,309.20. When we're looking at the assistant superintendent, which is the second column, the minimum base pay of grade 19,
Yeah.
right, grade
that's what
19
it
is where
was.
we were at. The minimum base pay was $56,947 and a penny. And then when they stepped out, and again, these are the 2018 rates, they'd be at $70,580.42. This person, being a salaried employee, would not be susceptible to overtime or holiday pay. So again, their salary remains $70,580.42. And as you can see, we're approximately a little over $200 difference between whether or not we would hire an assistant or we would do the proposed $1.50 an hour for 2 current employees. And then we can say, well, maybe it would cost less if we used our plant operator class 2, and that's why I gave you the second sheet. And you can see on the second sheet that the Class 2 operator actually makes more than the Class 3 because currently our Class 2 operator works nights. So there's a shift differential that's been built into that. So in our current setup, by going to a 2, it would not save us any money. Questions, comments as you look that over?
So Kurt, as it appears, we hire a new assistant superintendent, we're actually starting off low by $14,000 lower, right? 13.5 or whatever?
That is correct. The statement was made at the last council meeting, and I thought maybe the perception was given that the assistant superintendent would start out with a salary of $70,580.42, and that is not a reality. The reality is that they would start out at step 1, which would be $56,947. So yeah,
And
for the
that's the
first
last
2
step,
years,
70.
it would actually be less. The numbers that I gave you was when the employee was stepped out. The first 2 years, the cost would be considerably less than that. And then as you continue to look that over and maybe think about questions, just would like to point out a few things that was said during my conversation with the water union steward today. The union steward stated that he would go back and he would discuss with 2 other personnel to see if they would maybe be interested at the $1.50 bump per hour to be the backup operator of record. He stated that he and his close associate, who both work in the distribution system, were really not interested and really didn't feel that that their job allowed them to be in a position of operator of record because their maintenance, they're certified to a level 3, but their title, they're in the field a lot. They're maintenance individuals. So they're not directly involved with the lab testing, the various workings of do we need to turn this pump on and do we need to pump water, or is our water tower full, we can turn the pumps off. They're not watching that kind of thing. They're pretty much there 8 hours during the day, and their job is to go out and fix things. Like today, he said, for an example, we've been out at the creek working on the installation of a new pump, and I haven't even been in the plant and couldn't tell you what was going on in the plant. So it would seem that with that, it limits us to the 2 individuals, or the 2 level 3s and the level 2 person who works at night to maybe be that operator of record. If we get into the situation where we don't hire the assistant and we hire a brand new employee and they're not a level 3, I don't know if they would immediately fit into being that operator of record or not. I guess it would depend on the quality of employee that we find. So that, I believe, is the practical sense of how the EPA rules and regulations kind of apply to the city of Greenville and what we're going to be dealt with. Again, we're going to, and I would just preface this by saying, hopefully we can bring this matter to a resolution because we are currently an individual down, and I would like to know how we need to word and structure the civil service test, because I do believe that whether it's an assistant to the superintendent or whether it's replacing the individual that left inside the plant and they would be a union employee, we're going to have to test for that, and that testing is a process in and of itself. So the quicker that we can bring this to a resolution, the quicker that we can move forward. And Mr. Hensley didn't go so far as to say, and I don't know if Josh from the EPA told him, our reporting requirements on what we've been talking about as far as the operator of record, the EPA is giving a little bit of grace period. I believe it was into December that we have to start that reporting process. So I believe Mr. Hensley brought up Monday as an example. I brought up Monday as an example to Josh. Gary brought up Monday as an example to Josh at the EPA as well. And I think he finally caught on, and they went back and talked to the powers to be, and a mass email went out this afternoon that said they would not make the reporting requirements go into effect until the month of December. So that gives us a little bit of grace time. Obviously, getting through the month of November would have been a challenge with the number of holidays coming up. So again, that's kind of where we're at, and would encourage you to ask questions, and let's have a good conversation and hopefully figure this out for the good of the community.
If I could make this point is where the 20 hours comes in. The 20 hours is the requirement that the operator of record be present at the plant. So it's not that there's somebody has to be there 24 hours a day for this purpose. I mean, yeah, there's people there. So that's why I thought that a plus pay would be more practical than saying bumping somebody's salary up for the whole year as a designated person. Just the person that would fill in while Gary wasn't present to make up those 20 hours. So if Gary's sick a day and there's 4 hours, they get a plus pay for that 4 hours, not for the 2,080 hours for the whole year.
Yep, I see that. What do you think the union would look at that?
Well, I mean, the union's already made their proposal. Again, all things are negotiable. It's not in writing.
Yeah, right.
But that's where they've started out is at the $1.50, and it would be all through the other point that I want to make, just to go a step further with the actual requirements. Yes, we received a letter in the mail, I believe on Friday. There's two parts to those requirements. They did not change the number of days that one would have to be present. An operator of record would have to be present.
Oh, fine.
So an operator of record has to show up all 5 days, or 5 days out of the week. So there's 7 days. They have to be there 5 days out of the week. Yes, it can be on a weekend for a total of 25 hours. Now, one day they might show up and only be there for an hour. You would just have to manage the remainder of your hours on the other 4 days. But there is a 5-day requirement
For 20
at
hours.
20 hours. 5 days at 20 hours.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
I just received this a few hours ago, so I haven't really had a lot of time to review it. One thing I would say, well, I really have two comments here. First of all, the comparison that Kurt came up with, where they're pretty much equal to each other. The ORC pay that he has listed is for 2 people all year long at $1.50 an hour additionally. And originally, when we were in the meetings, they were talking about we needed somebody to fill in when Gary was not available. That is not 2 people all year long. So I guess I question some of this math as to how he came up with this. I guess the other thing I would say, we are starting tomorrow contract negotiations. We will be getting with this union sometime this month, most likely. And why we cannot wait until we at least talk. I mean, he's had some unilateral conversations with people and they've said what they think, but that's just what we're talking about, negotiations. It's a back and forth. So why we cannot wait just a little bit longer to explore this, as opposed to adding another position, which is going to culminate in another person making over $70,000 a year. And I did talk to Gary today in our meetings, and he does plan to add another additional person to, it's not just trading one off for the other. There's plans to add more personnel in the water department. So I'd just like you to consider that when you're thinking through this.
And that's an existing vacancy, right? The one he's hiring, no matter
Correct.
what?
Yes,
Yeah.
Correct.
yes.
I think additionally in the mix of all this, with this committee report, that also raised some questions regarding our strength ordinance for the water plant, correct?
I think originally.
Yes, we would have to change the strength.
We'd have to
ordinance.
change the strength
Correct.
ordinance, which is, again, done by legislation. but it would have to be done
Correct.
before that, would it have to be done before the person could be hired? I'm.
If it's an
unless we do,
assistant,
then how?
if we went the assistant route, but we could advertise for the test of plant operator tomorrow, because it's a vacancy.
Okay.
And we could, you know, move forward with trying to fill that, but I don't know that that's prudent, given this discussion.
I'd like to think that, you know, the union will kind of play along with this a little bit and help us go more the route that John suggests, but, you know, I somehow want to sit back and watch that, see how it plays out, because something tells me they won't do it.
Is it possible to table this again for a second time? Since our legal counsel is,
Just put it back on the table, right?
put it back on the table?
Yes, since it's been up for discussion, it could be retabled.
Yeah.
But I think,
When do the negotiations start? Did you say? Tomorrow?
But with
Different.
police, it's
Yeah.
a different union,
Yeah,
but they'll all
exactly.
fall into line once we got the police done.
Once they get rolling, each one of the unions will,
Pick
The goal
up
is to
from
have
one
all of the
another.
5 contracts wrapped up by the end of the year.
yes.
But we gotta fix this by December 1st, though, right? We gotta come up with something here.
So in speaking with the individual at the Ohio EPA, you know, basically the first month that you're in violation, we will lose the 20-hour exemption. And so we'll immediately go back to the 40 after the first violation. And you'll get a letter. Upon the second violation, you'll get another letter. The third violation, or the third month, you'll get a third letter. The fourth month, it's pretty much you go have the meeting in Columbus and find out how big the fine's going to be on the fourth month.
Oh, he did tell me that he would be happy to have a conference call with us if we wanted to do that.
with the note here.
He'd be happy. It seems very easy to talk with. The one employee that they're down right now, what did they do?
Worked in the plant, ran the plant.
That was a plant operator. They didn't do maintenance, didn't go out in the field.
Went out in the field and managed the backflow prevention program throughout the city. It was more of an administrative task than a maintenance task.
Since we're looking at the possibility of creating a new position altogether, and there's currently an opening now, with that opening, if it was filled as is, obviously there's a job description of what's expected. Would it be a possibility to change that pay scale and make this a requirement of a new operator coming in? Or would that have to go
It gets
through the
into the
union?
union rules because it's not something that they're currently, it's not a part of their
Something they're
job
doing
description
now?
right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why negotiation.
That's why you.
That coming up,
Yeah, that's
so-
why you get into the plus pay. They're gonna want more money. to do
Right,
it,
right.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah.
it's just something.
Yeah, I understand that for sure.
And then the only, I'm just, if I could make some closing comments to this topic, and I'll be quiet, is, you know, has anyone been in a situation where, you know, they've been the laborer, they've been the one that's been required to do the work, and they've had a boss that's responsible for telling them what to do, but sometimes that boss gets sick, and sometimes maybe that boss can't be around, or maybe there's other jobs to be run in a different area, and they can't be with you all the time, and so you're left with questions, and your only opportunity then is to be able to reach out to that boss and ask that question Nowadays, we do that, it's readily available via a cell phone. But as a city, that's what we're doing down at the water plant with one particular individual in charge. The folks in the union, do they come in, do they do their job, do they know how to do it? Absolutely, but they do that job somewhat with direction. And the part about this operator of record, yes, absolutely. 95 to 99% of the time, they will come in and every day will be business as usual. But there are days that water main breaks pop up. There are days when oil advisories might happen. There's just things that will come up and questions need to be answered. And right now, the city gets those questions answered by having a dedicated employee, a department head, who tries to be readily available 24/7. When we look at our police department, our fire department, and even our street department, we have a second in command. And we do not have that second in command at the water plant. I can remember my first year here, actually the first month, it happened on a Black Friday. And Gary had family coming in. He had taken the day off. He wasn't around. And I don't know, you can go see the well, I don't know if, yeah, I think you can still go down to 13th Street right now and see the remnants of this big hole in the street because we had a massive water main break that, to get it fixed, we needed to call in a company out of Union City. It was going to, I think the initial estimate on the phone was like $17,000. Union personnel did not want to make that call that, hey, you know, we're going to spend this much money on that. Gary was somewhat limited available. I actually was on the job site that day on a Black Friday. I wasn't required to work, but did what we needed to do, and we got the job done. Do those situations happen all the time? No. But I believe for the amount of money that we're looking at in differential, and we can argue back and forth, is it going to be $3,000? Is it going to be $6,000? At the end of the day, spending $3,000 to have a second line supervisor, I believe puts us in a good position to manage our people and provide good, safe drinking water to our community. And with that, I'll rest my case.
I think that's something we really need to consider, that point that he just made,
Well,
of having a second in command.
You know, what's interesting is maybe they need more training in how to handle an emergency
Well,
situation.
that's a good point too. I mean,
You know, maybe it's training with the EPA or hazmat or something of that nature, or just what to do in a crisis.
but it seemed, and I'm just saying, it just seems like we've got people that don't want that responsibility. Am I right?
Well, you know, that's shocking in itself.
Well, it is, but to me, it's not, because I see it everywhere. You know, nobody wants,
Well, nobody wants to take responsibility.
nobody wants to take responsibility.
Well, and the other thing you might also think about, and what Kurt said, we wouldn't even have been considering this position had the EPA had not stepped in and said, you must do something. And up until now, we've been getting by quite well without having that second in command. We also don't have a second in command in the wastewater. Is that coming up down the road too? I mean, we've just got to stop and consider dollars and cents. I mean, it has to be a consideration in this, so.
I think we need to really get down to what those dollars and cents are actually going to be, and then make that decision, you know. If we can identify that it's whatever it is between $3,000 and $6,000, we need to weigh that out.
Maybe we need to discuss this at a later date after have some more.
Right, yeah, not now.
We need to
Not
look at it
now.
more.
Is it possible to table this, President?
To retable it.
To retable it, since it's been up for discussion. I guess I would judge on the side of, yes, I think we can do that since it's been debating. It could go perhaps one more time. I've looked through a cursory review of the stuff that I have from Robert's Rules of Orders and our own rules, and it doesn't say anything about laying on the table a second time. But it has been discussed.
We haven't taken any action though, so that's why I think it probably could be, but I'm not the final.
Well, we need to abide by our own rules, which only deal with putting on the table and taking from the table. There is a rule to postpone, and there's a rule to postpone decision indefinitely. Of course, if you postpone indefinitely, that kills it on site.
We don't want
But I think we could perhaps, after this discussion, retable it until at least the next regularly scheduled meeting. But what is that going to do as far as putting us behind the 8 ball here as we move on?
Well, it's not going to stop the advertisement for the position that's empty right now as a regular plant operator.
So we're going to go ahead with the,
Are we? Is that a decision of this council to not hire the assistant and move forward with the proposed employee?
Are we gonna hire the operator either way?
No. If we hire the assistant, we're not hiring the operator.
We're hiring one more person.
If we can't come to an end to this tonight, and we're not sure whether we can retable, does it need to go away and be reassigned?
well, that would be the next thing. We could call a vote on the motion that's lifted from the table. If it passes, we move on. If it doesn't, we could
Could we ask for
consider a reassignment.
to reassign it back to the committee? Another, well, I think they have more information now than they did originally.
And of course, that was Personnel and Public Relations, which is
Right.
Mr. Whittaker and Mrs. Howdeshall and Mr. Wright. So, do you think you could get something resolved by the next?
Mr. Burgett?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker and I had a conversation in my office today, and just because of the dynamics of this conversation, and, I don't know whether or not the committee has changed its mind, but it did unanimously recommend hiring of this position. Might it be a topic worthy of a full
Work
work
session.
session to come to a consensus so everybody's hearing the same information?
If that's what this council so chooses, we can.
I think it'd be a
surely
wise thing to do.
accomplish in that.
'Cause this is a big decision, and it's just not on the personnel committee. Because we had it before, and we brought it to council, and we'd come to this, so I think everybody needs to be in on it.
Well, like John said, we do have more information now, but I think it'd be better if everyone has to say,
Yeah, it would be,
because it
It
is
would be
such a
good.
big project.
it would be great if we had some input from the primary negotiation. I mean, I'm sure that the first time that they sit down to negotiate, they're going to, give each other their demands. And that could be one of the topics.
Sit and see what the negotiations come out with the union.
This is October the 2nd, and we've got till December the 1st to comply, right? So, I mean, we gotta really wait it.
Well, even if we went to hire, it's gonna take months to get civil service testing done. So it's not going to be done in December anyway. So we're gonna have to figure out a temporary fix of some sort.
Right.
And hopefully the union would go ahead and agree that they would be part of that temporary fix, even if it's going to cost something. It may cost less in a short term than to rush into creating an expense that's going to be a continual expense.
But we got to know how those negotiations go, so we know which direction to go to hire, right?
Right, absolutely. It's a thing of time. And hopefully they get all the negotiations for all the departments that we're working.
Well, we have the motion on the table. The motion is for consideration of what was presented by the committee. It's not amended. It's not an amended motion. And we have to dispose of that now. Pardon? To lift it from the table? Who? Didn't you get that?
Who made?
Clarence made the
Clarence
motion.
made the
Clarence made the motion to lift it
Oh,
from the
the
table.
original.
The original motion to lift from the table, right?
I don't think we've ever made a motion to accept the report.
No, no, there hasn't been.
Okay.
But now we have a report and there is something on the table to dispose of, is what I'm saying. We can't walk out of here and leave it
no.
lay.
No.
Well, I would, just on a talking point, I would like to just dispose of it and bring it back. That way we would have more time. So I would make a motion to dispose of this at this point.
Well, right now, the motion
Oh,
was, the original motion way back when it was to accept the report.
That's when I
okay,
did it.
so now
And
it's,
that's when
I
Doug
made the
tabled it.
okay.
Okay, now it's lifted off the table, so the original motion goes back to, it is moved that the report be accepted. So that's what you would be voting on.
So
So
we'd
a
have to
no
vote on
vote is
that.
turning it down.
Pardon?
A no vote is turning the.
Right.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'm getting tired.
Further discussion on the motion to accept the committee's report, original. Okay, call roll, please.
Rogers?
No.
Schmidt?
No.
Whitaker?
No.
Wright?
No.
Godwin?
No.
Hensley?
No.
Addishell?
No,
Motion fails. Okay, now, with that discussion pertaining to this issue, I know it's not under old business. I take it it's council's desire to, at some point in time, set a special meeting,
Work session, yeah.
a work session to discuss this further? And what is the preference for that date? Traditionally, what we've done is going to the following Tuesday, which would be October the 9th.
Would we have any, I mean, I think it would be useless to have a work session until we have more information on what's going on with the union and
Probably
and
go out-
negotiations and so
Should
forth.
probably go out to the second week in November.
Yeah,
Second week in November,
because all we're going to talk
which
about
would
is
be
this.
the 13th.
13th of November?
We'll probably have more information by then, I
That'll
would
give us
think.
plenty of time to maybe have more than one union meeting
Okay.
negotiation.
Is that acceptable with members of this council?
Yes.
I may not be available.
At
Yeah.
6:30?
13.
Thanks.
This is 13th.
Tuesday, November 13th, 6:30, did you say?
I said
President?
We haven't
6:30.
said some
Oh,
I
okay.
said
people are
6:30.
taking that time. So would that be acceptable to majority of those?
Yes.
Okay? Then we will set that for 6:30. Temporarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
That could
if
change.
something changes, why? We have a couple of council meetings to reconsider that. So that will be tentative, don't post that as yet, please. Okay? All right. Okay,
Very good.
now, we have nothing under no new business, items of communication.
A monthly report was received from the Income Tax Department. Meeting minutes were received from the July 25th, 2018 Community Improvement Corporation meeting. A letter dated September 18th, 2018 was received from ODOT regarding modifications to the US 127 Krickelberg Road intersection project to begin in the summer of 2019. And an invitation to the Partnering for Progress Fall Mixer on November 7th, 2018 was received. These reports, letter, and invitation have been distributed to council.
Any other items of communication? call down the council, please.
Mr. Rogers?
I'm gonna pass tonight.
Mr. Schmidt?
Pass.
Mr. Whitaker?
Pass.
Mr. Wright?
Pass.
Mr. Godwin?
Pass.
Mr. Hensley?
Pass.
Mrs. Habershell?
I'm the only one. I'd like to say, bring up a little something on the drug addiction. Jeff and I had the privilege of attending Family Health last week on a program that they have out there for any addiction. This program is sponsored by donations. It is not sponsored by taxpayers or the money. So therefore, I feel if you or anybody out there watching us know anyone that needs help, call the Family Health on the second Friday and the fourth Friday of every month, and you will get help. And I think that's good to know that people out there with addictions do have help, and people are willing to help. And with that, I pass.
President Burkett?
I have nothing at this time. I will pass.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Hensley to adjourn. Call the roll, please.
Rogers?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Godwin?
Yes.
Hensley?
Yes.
Habershell?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you for your attention and attendance.
Do what?
Clarence.